Is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes.
He's going for it.
Yes! Oh my goal! What a goal!
And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And what a season Daniel Gazdag is having for your Philadelphia Union. 10 goals in 22 games. Just an unbelievable season for Daniel Gazdag. A season that, even myself am surprised by. And we'll talk about, where I predicted Daniel would finish in terms of goals this season. But to have 10 goals already, we knew the Daniel Gazdag we saw last year when the Union first got him. We knew that wasn't the player that the Union were getting. And yet you had all these fans complaining about, Daniel Gazdag's a bust. Daniel Gazdag sucks. And now you hear crickets. You don't hear anybody complaining about Daniel Gazdag, at least Union fans. I mean, I know you still have people in extra time complaining about Daniel Gazdag. He's not a true number 10. But my argument for those guys on extra time would be, name me a player that is a traditional number 10, because the game of soccer has changed the last couple of years where teams don't use 10s anymore, or players that would be considered 10s aren't like the traditional 10s that are the playmakers. A lot of you guys may or may not know, but one of my favorite players of all time is Juan Mata. He used to play for Chelsea, Manchester United, and this guy was your traditional 10 at Chelsea. He was the playmaker for Chelsea, scoring a ton of goals, assisting a ton of goals for his teammates. Then when he comes to Manchester United, they don't use him in his spot as a number 10. They play him out on the wing, which he's not a winger. He's a 10. But because the traditional 10's been dying out in soccer, there is no room on the field for a traditional 10. I think the closest player in MLS that I would say is a traditional 10 is Carles Gil for New England. He's a playmaker for sure. But even then, he doesn't really stay in the center of the field like your typical number 10s would a few years ago. He's a player that will drift to the right, drift to the left. He doesn't stay centrally. But if you want to talk about traditional 10s, which Daniel Gazdag is not, then Carles Gil would be the closest to that. But I think Daniel Gazdag is exactly what the modern day 10 is. The player that's not getting a lot of assists, the player that's not having a lot of 1-2s with his teammates, linking up with his teammates. He's making runs in behind the strikers. That's what number 10s are today. So it's just crazy to me where extra time they want to slander Daniel Gazdag, want to discredit the season he's having because, he's not a traditional number 10. But like I said, name me 5 players in MLS right now that are traditional number 10s. You cannot do it because the number 10 in the world of soccer is dead. But and to get off of all that negativity from people that don't want to credit Daniel Gazdag for having a terrific season, let's go ahead and talk about just all this good news that we saw last night in Orlando. We'll go ahead and break down the goal, review my keys to the game. 3 stars on the night, blunder of the week, and then we have a ton of news to get to. This is probably going to be one of our longer episodes with the news, where I might just keep my thoughts down on what happened in the Orlando versus Philadelphia game down, so I can get to all the news segments. So without further ado, let's just go straight into the news. And so I really want to talk about the Tati Castellanos moving from New York City to Girona, the newly promoted La Liga side in Spain. But because all that information is not out yet, I'm not going to talk about it this episode. I'll save it for, I guess, the next episode, because I'm going to assume sometime this week it's going to be official that Tati's leaving NYC. But I think that whole situation is going to turn out to be like the Jack Harrison situation when Jack was with New York City, where he got bought by City Footballing Group, bought by Man City. And then as soon as he got at Man City, he was loaned out. So I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Totti, where Man City buys Totti from New York City, but then they're going to loan him out straight away to Girona in La Liga. And he'll never play for Man City, especially now that they have Erling Haaland. But like I said, once all those details become official, I'm going to guess sometime this week that all that stuff will be official. We'll talk about that in the next episode. But speaking of New York City, we can talk a little bit about Kleberson joining New York City FC as an assistant coach. You guys might not pay close attention to the academy, what's going on with some of these players, but Kleberson, after he retired with the Union, he went and joined the academy as an assistant coach. And in March of 2022, he finally left the academy of the Union to become an assistant coach with the Union's second team. And after a couple months, he left U2 and got a permanent job with the first team of New York City, which was effective immediately. Kleberson served as the head coach for a whole bunch of different Union Academy teams from 2011 to 2021. And over the course of his time with the Union, Kleberson provided to be essential to the development of young players, and he led Union's youth teams to international and domestic success, notably winning the Generations Adidas Cup in 2019. Now, it is sad that Kleberson wasn't given a spot with the Union's first team, but I guess ultimately when Pat Noonan left and the Union were looking in-house, they were looking out of market for a replacement for Pat. They ultimately went with Ryan Richter, like we know. I'm sure they probably interviewed Kleberson, but they felt at the time that Richter was the better choice to take over for Pat. And unfortunately, there was just no spot for Kleberson on the first team. And so he went, like I said, and joined Union 2 just to hone his skills even more. But you can't fault him for leaving Union 2, leaving the Union's organization when he has a chance to go ahead and be a part of a first team, be an assistant coach. And it makes a lot of sense, too, with all the Brazilians and South Americans on New York City's team. And you have a player that in Brazil's 2002 World Cup, I know when Ronaldo won player of the tournament, but a lot of people will argue that Kleberson was the best player in that tournament. And so you have a coach that was a part of something truly special in the early 2000s with Brazil. You had a player that's played all over the world, including with Manchester United. So, I mean, he brings a lot of experience. And so if he can bring the most out of a player like Thales Magno, who's having a terrific season with New York City, a player like Thiago Martins, a player like Herber, you have Thiago. I mean, there's so many Brazilians on New York City's team. And so I think bringing in another Brazilian, a coach that can get the most out of players, I think this is a smart move for Nick Cushing in New York City. And yeah, it just sucks that it's New York City, but New York City are definitely getting a great assistant coach, and it's a huge loss for the Union. But like we know, the Union, they don't just develop players. Pat Noonan was developed with the Union under Jim Curtin. Jim Curtin spoke about that. And now I know Kleberson wasn't developed under Jim, but Kleberson got his chance at coaching soccer with the Union's academy, and he impressed so much that he got a job with Union 2. And so you'd love to see this. The Union are always going to develop players, always going to sell players. But if the Union can keep producing coaches, I mean, this is what you want. You want to see both of these things happening. And you can even argue that the Union helped develop Chris Albright into what he's become. So technical staff, managers, coaches, and now players. I mean, just a fantastic job the Union have done with just producing so many talented people. But let's go ahead and move on to Nashville announcing the signing of Shaq Moore, who is a right back / wing back from Tenerife, who play in the second division of Spain. Nashville are acquiring Shaq for $2 million, it is being reported. He's 25 years old, The deal's through the 2025 season with an option for the 2026 season. He is from Georgia, and it is funny too. I feel like now Nashville has a couple players on their team from Georgia, and Atlanta United aren't signing these players. They're letting them go to Nashville. And it was funny too, where Shaq said a big reason why he joined Nashville was because he's so close to Atlanta, which I feel like, why wasn't Atlanta United all over this deal? Because they could use a right back with Brooks Lennon out injured. But regardless, Shaq had 101 appearances across all competitions in the past 3 seasons in Spain. He had 15 caps with USMNT after debuting in 2018, and he scored his lone goal in a game against Canada in the 2021 CONCACAF Gold Cup, which the men's team won that tournament. But I think this is a terrific signing for Nashville, a player that's really, really good in 1v1 defending. He can get forward. He can send in crosses into the box. He's the exact player that Gary Smith loves, a player that's going to thrive in that system, a player that's looking to be one of the players, including the men's national team when the U.S. go to Qatar. And I think he's a really, really good opportunity to just cement his place to be one of those 26 players going to Qatar. He's going to shine, I believe, for Nashville, but I think it will take some getting used to, and I would be surprised if Shaq sees out this whole deal with Nashville until 2026. I think, if he can go ahead and impress in the second half of the season with Nashville, gets called up to the men's national team for Qatar, if he gets any chance with the national team and impresses in Qatar, it's a very high chance that Shaq can only be here in Nashville for 6 months and then he gets another shot in Europe. But even if not, I think he's just going to tear it up in MLS as a defender. He'll get better at that 1v1 defending, especially because that's how Nashville likes to play. They like to leave their defenders isolated 1v1, and then they like to hit out on the counterattack. So Shaq's definitely going to get every opportunity that he can possibly get to show that he is indeed a good 1v1 defender, to further his skills in 1v1 defending, to get better in the attack, sending in that final ball into the 18-yard box on crosses. So great move for Nashville, great move for Shaq. And I think, like I said, I think there's a player that will take advantage of his opportunity and get a spot with the USMT when they go to Qatar. But let's go ahead and focus on another transfer, and that is LAFC making yet again another move. They have acquired Ecuador international midfielder Sebastian Mendez from Orlando City for $300,000 in-game, plus add-ons. Orlando retains a sell-on percentage as well. So he is 25 years old. He's been capped 30 times by Ecuador. He had 13 appearances this season, 5 of those starts with Orlando City. Orlando City, they just had a ton of depth on the bench. A lot of good starters. We saw Cesar Araujo, the guy who took Mendez's spot, and just play a fantastic game last night against the Union. And so Mendez wasn't getting a lot of chances to really cement a starting spot in the starting 11. I know I've seen a ton of fans questioning this move. How could Orlando City agree to a deal with LAFC? How could LAFC afford yet again another player, especially another questionable TAM deal? But, LAFC, they take advantage of it. And it's just going to further cement their place to win the Western Conference, to potentially win the Supporters' Shield. There's a player where I think he's going to offer a lot in the defensive half for LAFC. A lot of fans, a lot of pundits that cover MLS have said the one area that LAFC lacks is a midfielder, a player that can protect the back line of that defense for LAFC. I think Mendez is going to be one of those players. Yes, he's not as good as Araujo. That's why he lost his spot. but he's still going to be a player that's going to put in a tackle, a player that loves the press, a player that just reads the game so well. And he's not afraid to throw his body in front of a couple shots. So if you're looking for a number 6 that can play out of the back, that passing the ball forward, that can defend the back line, there's not a lot better in MLS, in my opinion, that do it as good as Mendez does. And LAFC take advantage of it. It is questionable a little bit just how they still have so much money to spend on players, but I know this is a deal that the Union were never going to make, but this is one of those moves where you do scratch your head and wonder, well, did the Union have any interest at all in bringing Sebastian Mendez to the club? I know a lot of fans want to see the Union bring in MLS veterans, bring in more MLS players to push on. And for whatever reason, just Ernst Tanner doesn't want to go out there and sign MLS players. He trusts the academy, the players that they're producing, and then he trusts the young players, unproven players in South America and Europe, and MLS players not so much. But this would have been a fantastic signing. I think definitely not a starter. I think he could have potentially challenged Leon Flock for a starting spot, but I don't think anybody's taking that starting spot away from Leon Flock. He just offers way too much to this team, even though it is annoying seeing fans on social media just continue complaining about Leon Flock, saying they don't want him to start anymore, that they want Jack McGlynn over him, they want somebody else over him, they want a new player in over him. I don't know, just so many people just slandering Leon Flock. I mean, and we even have fans complaining about Jose Martinez, people complaining about Kai Wagner. Like, it's crazy that we have so many Union fans that are finding things to complain about, even though they're in first place, even though they're putting up a great challenge for the Supporters Shield again. But I guess some people just have nothing better to do than complain. But Leon Flock's been a terrific player for the Union, and he's a big reason why Kai Wagner's having a breakout season this year with the Union, just because of what Leon offers defensively. He allows Kai Wagner to go forward and get involved in the attack. But regardless, want to see the Union go out and sign some more MLS players when there's more MLS players available for trade. Yeah, I definitely want to see the Union trying to get involved. Like I said, I don't know if the Union were in with Sebastian or not, but these are the type of players that the Union really need to be out there targeting, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and move on to Orlando City. So, yes, they got rid of Sebastian Mendez, but they're going and bringing in a forward/winger in Nico Gioacchini, who has played with USMNT. He has made 8 appearances with the national team, 3 goals, including 2 goals against Panama. He's only 22 years old. He had 49 appearances, 6 goals for his club in France, Cone, which they allowed this to be a free transfer, but they're going to retain a sell-on clause. Like I said, he's played with the national team, made 8 appearances, 3 goals. A player that's going to be pushing to be one of those players, just like Shaq Moore, to be one of the 26 that's included going to Qatar with the national team. I think this is a good signing when Orlando City aren't getting much out of Tesho Akindele, who didn't make a big impact last night when he came off the bench. And so if Nico can go ahead and find his form, then 1, he has a very high chance of going and making it in Qatar with the USMNT. And 2, with him just being 22 years old, he'll definitely get another chance in Europe if he impresses with Orlando City. So this is a low-risk, high-reward signing by Orlando City. I believe Orlando City had to send $500,000 in game for discovery rights to Montreal, which is so stupid, the whole discovery rights list. But I feel like we've talked about that multiple times on this podcast, and there's no need to talk about just all the stupid rules in MLS. But regardless, a great signing from Orlando City. A player that's going to get every opportunity to either 1, get a starting spot, or at least, get ahead of the depth chart ahead of Akindele. So this is definitely one of those signings where, okay, if the Union didn't already have 4 or 5 strikers on the roster, yeah, the Union potentially could have been on him. It reminds me of the Andrew Wooten signing a couple seasons ago that the Union made, where they needed a striker, didn't really have any international roster spots open. They go out and find Andrew Wooten, who's an American, and it doesn't really work out for the Union or Andrew Wooten. I don't think that's going to be the case with Orlando City, but regardless, just when you get a player for free and a player that's not going to cost an international spot, a player that's 22 years old, wants to be playing in Europe, but realizes, all right, well, I'll have a real good chance in MLS to just try to fix some things up and then potentially get sold back to Europe. So Orlando City making good business. But let's go ahead and talk about that Orlando City versus Philadelphia Union game. As we all know, the Union scraped a 1-0 victory back to Philadelphia, making that 4 wins in a row for the Union. The second time they've done that this season, with the first being a 5-game winning streak at the beginning of the season. And the Union are currently 1 win away from tying the most wins on the road, which they did in 2018 and 2019 with 6. And I told you guys last episode that this Union team just feels different on the road this year compared to years prior. The Union, they've scored first in 7 out of 11 matches on the road this season, going 4-1-2 when that happens. And this team, I know, like I said 30 seconds ago, 1 win away from tying the most wins on the road with 6. And I feel like we're definitely going to see a lot more wins on the season from the Union. And this is a team that, last year we saw them come from behind a lot on the road. But this is a team that's scoring early. This is a team that's defending a lot better, I believe, on the road this season. This is a team that's not giving a ton of shots up on the road. This is just how the Union are this season. Just a tough, hard-nosed defensive team. And I know Jim Curtin's talked about it multiple times this season, saying, there's no surprise. This is who we are. We're a defensive-first team. And the Union scrape and get a goal off of a set piece. And I just go back to my conversation a few months ago with Frank Leicht, where he said 35% of goals, I believe it was, are scored on set pieces. You've got to be good on set pieces. And the Union might not be getting a ton of goals from open play, but set pieces are just as important, if not even more important, with defending them and attacking them. You had a great delivery from Kai Wagner on the corner, fantastic run and flick on by Glesnes on the header, and that finish from double-digit Danny, I believe is what fans were saying Danny Higginbottom's calling him. Just great play right there from the Union. And we'll break down that goal here in a little bit, but Daniel Gazdag has, like I said in the intro, just completely surpassed my expectations this season. As I've said, when I did my predictions on the season, I said he'd get 8 goals on the season, but he has 10 goals so far, and there's still 12 games remaining. And it's the 12th time in Union history that they've had a player in double-digit goal-scoring figures. And it's also the second time this season that Daniel Gazdag scored in 3 straight games. His high on the season is 4 straight, and he has a chance to go ahead and tie that against Houston over the weekend. But Jim Curtin was asked about Daniel Gazdag's impact on the team this year. You finally have a player on the season that's in double digits, and it's come from a midfield spot where you guys don't typically get that production. This is what Jim Curtin had to say on Daniel Gazdag's season so far.
The goals are incredible. Daniel's carried us through stretches of the season with his goal scoring. If you really watch tonight, though, I mean, the amount of running he did on the defensive side of the ball, dealing with teams 2-6s, he's done it week in and week out for us. So incredible player. I think it's no coincidence in this sport when you work so hard, good things happen for you. And that goal is an example of that. So he plays the right way. I think he could have probably 8 or 9 more assists if guys were a little sharper in front of goal too. So the numbers could be even more inflated. But He's a great player, a great teammate, a midfielder, like you said, that's hit double-digit goals already with a lot of games left to play. And I want all these guys to start to get recognition for things like the All-Star team and then Best 11. And I know there's a ton of great players in this league, but Daniel's had as good a season as anybody, so his name should be involved in all those discussions.
Yeah, and Daniel Gazdag, he has 5 goals on this season. And it's like we were talking about. There is no traditional number 10s anymore in the world of soccer. If there are, there's hardly any left, but teams don't play with traditional 10s anymore. And it is crazy, too, when you think about it, that, Daniel Gazdag probably should have at least 8 or 9 assists on the season. And then you go and look at some of the goals that he's had saved. Like, he could definitely have more than 10 goals on the season. He's having a terrific season for the Union, and Daniel Gazdag is going to be one of my 3 stars and my 3 stars on the night. But Jim Curtin talked about it where, Daniel Gazdag just defensively against Orlando's 2 6s. And that's what impresses me a lot is, like 10s, they stay for it a lot of times. They like to get in behind the strikers. But Daniel Gazdag comes back to win the ball back. He'll tackle the ball. And to have a 10 like that, it's great to get all the goal production that we're getting from him, but a player that's not afraid to make a tackle, a player that's just so shifty with his runs, a player that's linking up so well with his teammates. I mean, I knew the player we were getting in Daniel Gazdag was going to be special, but again, I just didn't think he was going to have this good of a season for the Union. Where, I'm sure MLS people still aren't going to give Daniel Gazdag the recognition that he deserves, but Jim's right. He needs to be up there in the MVP candidate talks. And going back to my predictions, I had Daniel Gazdag finishing number 3 out of all players in MLS in terms of winning the MVP award. And he's definitely on pace to be in that conversation. But again, we're not getting that from the people that I feel like have a lot of say over at MLS. And that's fine. That's just going to be motivation for Daniel Gazdag and this team to just continue to surprise people. I mean, people shouldn't be surprised by Daniel Gazdag. They shouldn't be surprised by the Union. But people don't want to give them the recognition that they deserve. And that's fine. This team will continue to be underdogs, even though they shouldn't be underdogs. Everybody should know who the Union are. They should know how the Union play. And you don't want to give them credit, that's fine. And I'm not saying that teams aren't doing that, but the people that, make all these votes and seem like they have so much say, don't want to give this team credit. But it's fine. Keep sleeping on the Union. But I think the Union, they caught a huge break with Facundo Torres missing a big chance for Orlando City in the 28th minute. He should have put Orlando up 1-0. Just a terrible miss. Great play there for Orlando City to get this chance. And it came from Orlando City playing out of the back with Glese just taking a goal kick. Hoofs it up the field. Carr wins the header. Jack Elliott's pulled out of position. Kai Wagner should have been on Facundo Torres, but Kai Wagner was pushed up far out of position. Jack Elliott's pulled out of position because he has to try to win that header against Carr. Carr has a great flick on to Mauricio Pereira, which Jose Martinez should have tracked this runner. Jacob Glesnes tries to get to the ball, but Pereira is faster, quicker, gets to the ball. And because of that, you have Bizo worrying about the guy on the outside, right? You have Glesnes going to the ball for Pereira. And then you have Facundo Torres, who has acres of space ahead of him because Jack Elliott came out of position to try to win that initial header against Carr. And then Kai Wagner was just pushed up way too far up the field. And so Pereira does a good job getting to this ball, plays a beautiful ball into Torres, takes a great first touch away from Jack Elliott. Jack Elliott tries to recover from this. Bizo sees this whole thing developing and does a really good job just with his sprint speed to try to close down this, but wasn't enough. And somehow just Torres puts this wide. He has Andre Blake beat. All he has to do is put this one target. And if he can do that, Orlando City are up 1-0. And that really does change the whole complexity of this game. Where, okay, the Union, who knows how they would have approached this. I think if the Union would have got scored in here like we've seen so many times, the Union usually go right back down and have a chance to score themselves. But I think we definitely wouldn't have seen the Union sit as deep as they did throughout this game if Orlando would have put the ball in the back of the net. But fortunately for the Union, Torres missed this, and this really should have put Orlando City up. And I think that was probably, in my opinion, their best chance of the night. I know they were limited to one shot, one target all game. Orlando, they were forced to take shots outside the box, which is a win for the Union because it takes something special to beat Andre Blake outside the 18-yard box. And I thought, minus that moment where Jose didn't track Mauricio, I thought he played excellent in the game, protecting the back line, not allowing Torres to get shots off with his left foot. Fantastic on the night. Jack McGlynn played all right, I thought, on the right side of the diamond. His first time in his career playing there, if I'm remembering that correctly. Early in this game, that Jack was getting in the way of his teammates, a little bit of confusion going on where he should be on the field. But the one thing Jack McGlynn's always going to offer you when he starts is, one, high passing accuracy, and two, he's going to have a lot of touches. He led the team in touches again on the night with 56. He had 8 passes in the final third, which was the most on the team. He's just a player that's always wanting to play the ball forward. And I think he'll get the start against Houston on the left side of the diamond with Jose suspended, and that'll move Leon Flock to the 6. But Jim Curtin could come and switch it around and play a 4-2-3-1 because Leon Flock hasn't played as the lone 6 a lot with the Union. Leon Flock himself has said he feels more comfortable playing as a 6 with somebody else next to him. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Jim Curtin does against Houston. I thought this game we'd see the 4-2-3-1, but they went with a diamond again. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Jim Curtin does against Houston. Definitely has options. But overall, this was a really, really great defensive performance from the Union. A gritty performance on the road. One that, if the Union can play like that every single time on the road, which for the most part they have this season, they're going to go ahead and really make a strong push to be in the Supporters' Shield race. This was also an extremely physical game with 22 fouls. We saw Corey Burke subbed off with a concussion, which, by the way, that was really sickening to hear from the Orlando City fans booing Corey Burke when he was down with a concussion. Like, I get you guys are upset because Corey Burke's been down on the field a lot. The Union have been on the floor a lot. But one, your team keeps fouling, so don't be mad at the Union players for being on the ground when your team keeps fouling the Union. Of course, the Union are going to take their time, killing time off the clock because you guys keep fouling them. But two, when Corey Burke goes down, where the play doesn't even involve him, he's in your goalie box, and he just falls down, and you're booing him. Like, that should tell you that something's seriously wrong with Corey Burke. And he leaves this game with a concussion, but your fans just keep booing him. And it's like, that's totally unacceptable when a player is seriously hurt with a concussion. We saw Jose Martinez subbed off because of a possible rib injury because of the challenge from Araujo. We saw Junior Urso's head wrapped up because of a cut to his forehead. Just a really, really intense game. And like I said, just a hard-fought win defensively for the Union to come away with all 3 points and the clean sheet. And then, of course, you have the penalty shout for Orlando at the end. And honestly, I'm not sure why Orlando's commentators and fans were so convinced that it was a penalty. You had Antonio Carlos pulling on Daniel Gazdag first. And so it doesn't matter what happens after that play. That's the initial foul. Antonio Carlos pulling on Daniel Gazdag. And because of that, it's going to be awarded a free kick to the Union. you had Orlando fans saying, oh, Daniel Gazlag's all over him. Which you're right, he was. Both players were pulling on each other. But this whole play initiated first because Antonio Carlos is pulling on Gazdag. And you even had Antonio Carlos pulling on Gazdag before the corner kick's even taken. There was contact from Antonio Carlos. You can tell that Daniel Gazdag is getting very upset. He's trying to get the ref's attention, like, hey, look, I'm getting pulled on here, and you got to separate this. And Antonio Carlos continues to do it when the corner kick's taken. So then, of course, Daniel Gazdag is going to grab him onto him. He's like, well, if you can get away with it, so can I. And you have Antonio Carlos pulling Daniel Gazdag towards him when the corner kick's taken. It's like, I don't know what you guys wanted. This was clearly a foul on Antonio Carlos, and pro referees even said that after the game. They said, upon reviewing the APP attacking phase of play, the referee determined that Antonio Carlos pulled the shirt of Gazdag first and committed a holding foul. Therefore, the foul and the APP by Antonio Carlos preceded the pull by Gazdag and negated the penalty claim. The final outcome was a direct free kick for Philadelphia for the foul by Antonio Carlos. That's exactly what happened there. And to act like Daniel Gazdag is the one who started this, it's like, I get it, right? You guys are all Orlando City fans, and even with the commentators, you're paid by Orlando City, so of course you're going to be biased a little bit. But all the angles was clear as day that it's Antonio Carlos pulling on Daniel Gazdag first, that they're both grabbing on each other. And so to see like all these excuses on social media, like, oh, it doesn't matter, when literally the rules of the game tell you, regardless, whoever makes the contact first, it's going to be a foul. And it just so happened to be the attacking team, Orlando City, which does not happen often when there's a corner kick. They're called for the foul because he's all up on Daniel Gazdag first. So I'm not really sure why their fans, the commentators, are all upset, but they want to act like there's an agenda against them, that all pro referees always have something against them. I mean, look, Union have been apologized by pro refs 2 or 3 times this season for blown calls against them, but you don't see the Union out here making excuses. They're still going about their business, still taking care of the job. And it shouldn't come down to a referee's decision to get you a point in this game. And I say that all the time. The game shouldn't be down to the referee trying to win you a points. And I don't know what to tell you, Orlando City fans. I mean, I doubt you guys are listening to this podcast, but if you guys didn't want a controversial call, then your team should have put the ball in the back of the net without a potential penalty. And they couldn't do that. The Union, it was so funny too. Like, the Union forced Orlando City all the way back to Pedro Gillespie to try to kick a long ball back. And the referee blows the whistle as soon as they kick the ball backwards. It's like, you guys had no ideas. You guys could not break down this Union team. And you guys want to complain about a penalty. Like, be mad about your poor execution at home, where you guys have been so inconsistent. And 2, you guys have been so inconsistent this whole season scoring goals. So don't be mad at the referee for not giving you a penalty, which it wasn't a deserved penalty. Great call by VAR to not award the penalty. Be mad at your team. And maybe Nico, like we talked about, a new player coming in, maybe he'll change the goal scoring fortunes for Orlando City. But this one isn't on the referee, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and review the keys to the game. So I talked about that Philadelphia and Orlando game a lot longer than I thought I would. But my 3 keys to the game were: 1, take shots outside the box. Orlando City, like I said, and they were tied for second in MLS in terms of shots from outside the 18. The Union had 4 out of their 9 shots outside of the box against Orlando City. 2 of those shots were blocked. Nothing was on target. I'm not going to say a fail or a pass because the Union were taking shots outside the box. Like I said, they needed to do. But 2 of the shots were blocked. None of them were on target. So it's not a fail or a pass, in my opinion. Number 2. Defending and attacking set pieces, I said. Orlando City, they've scored the second most set pieces on the season with 9, while while they've conceded 5. And the Union were terrific defending set pieces on the night. We just got done talking about the Union defending the corner kick where Orlando City thought it should have been a penalty. But this is 100% a pass because the Union get a goal off of a corner. The Union, they had 5 corners of this game, and they held Orlando City to 2 of them. You had Julian Kranza, who had a free header in the 34th minute. Unfortunate, couldn't get that one in the back of the net. Did go out again for another corner kick. They ran this corner routine twice in the game where they had everyone on the line, and then Julian Kranza peels off the back post, makes a run towards like the penalty spot, and he got a header to one of them, and then the second one, I think Kai Wagner mishit the corner kick. But it's just like really, really clever. It's so creative from Frank Leicht, seeing these corner kick routines that he's coming up with, and that's now 3 straight games the Union have scored off of corners. And yeah, who cares if the Union aren't scoring from open play? If they can continue to score goals off of corner kicks and defend corner kicks very well, then that's going to take this team very, very far. So shout out to Frank Leicht for just these creative routines. And then number 3, I said counterattack Orlando. That's a fail in my opinion. The Union had 2 good counterattacking opportunities in this game, but they were slow getting the ball moving and finding the right pass. Opportunities were there, especially later on in this game for the Union, but they just weren't able to capitalize on finding the right pass, or when they picked their head up and saw where they should pass the ball to, they got the ball taken off their foot. So all in all, happy to see when some of my keys to the game click. But let's go ahead really quickly review the 3 stars of the game. Starting with number 1, Kai Wagner, 2 chances created, 1 assist, 3 or 6 on crosses, 3 headed clearances, 4 ball recoveries, 5 out of 5 ground duels won. I mean, this guy, like, offensively, we know what he does. And for the most part, he's been sound defensively. There's been a couple games this season. New England, I didn't think he was great defensively in. But Orlando City, he steps up, has a big game defensively for the Union, especially in the heat. To see him just getting forward so often, but then tracking back. I know, like we talked about the Facundo Torres miss. Kai was caught out of position, should have been back there, but he was pushed up high in the field. But look, it didn't stop him from having a good defensive game. He had a terrific defensive game, in my opinion, and that is why Kai Wagner is star number 1 for me. Star number 2 is Jacob Glesnes, 1 assist, 2 chances created, 1 block shot, 2 out of 3 tackles won, 3 headed clearances, 1 interception, 3 out of 4 ground duels won, 2 ball recoveries. There was a moment in this game where Jacob Glesnes was beat. I forget exactly when it happened, but Jacob Glesnes did a really good job to recover and to block the shot. And that's what you like to see just from your center back. Okay, if they're beat, they don't give up. They still stay with the play. And Jacob Glesnes was everywhere defensively for this team. Jack Elliott, I thought, he was sound for the most part. But again, his first game back after 2 games. So there's going to be a little bit of slowness, a little bit of rustiness. But him and Jack Elliott, him and Jacob Glesnes just continue to show why they're up there with some of the best center backs in the league. And then number 3 on my list is Daniel Gazdag, 1 goal, 22 out of 28 completed passes, 1 chance created, 6 ball recoveries, 1 out of 1 tackles won. And it just goes back to what Jim Curtin was saying about Daniel Gazdag defensively. He really worked his tail off this game defensively against the 2 number 6s of Orlando City. He was getting to those 50-50 balls a lot. And just a terrific game from Daniel Gazdag, and it does feel strange not to give him player of the game since he scored the game-winning goal. But yeah, Kai Wagner was terrific on the night with his deliveries from the set pieces. But let's go ahead and talk about that Daniel Gazdag goal and that he scored. And this was off of the corner kick, like we said, from the Union. Terrific ball in from Kai Wagner. And this is interesting too, because if you guys go back and watch this, the Union line up in like a 3-man system. You have Jack Elliott, the first guy, you have Jacob Glesnes, the second guy, and then you have Mikael Ua as the third guy. They're all around the penalty spot. And so you're going to have Jacob Glesnes be the only player making the run towards the ball of where Kai Wagner is kicking. And then you have Elliott and Ua all making a run towards the back post. You have Jacob Glesnes winning this header first, powerful flick on, and then you have Daniel Gazdag right between Juan and Galese, and just what a finish from Daniel Gazdag. I mean, the positioning of that play for him to be in the right place at the right time. You see it all the time where teams put a player on the goalkeeper to try to throw the goalkeeper off. But, in this instance, Daniel Gazdag was the player that they were aiming for. It wasn't to throw off Galese. It was, look, we really believe we have an advantage right here to, if we can win this initial flick one, then you're being with a chance to score. And Juan was completely caught off guard. Like I said, powerful header by Jacob Glesnes. But it all started just with the clever set piece that Frank Leicht designed with Jacob Glesnes running towards the corner flag, getting that terrific header. You had Ua, Elliott, Carranza all running towards the back post. And just terrific finish from the Union and terrific goal that the Union scored. Let's go ahead and talk about Blunder of the Week before we end this podcast. And I was going to talk about this in the news segment, but I was going to leave it for Blunder of the Week because it 100% is newsworthy, but it also is Blunder of the Week worthy. And so Blunder of the Week is going to go to Dele Alli of Everton. First hard kick against Jacori Hayes of Minnesota United. Jacori Hayes will miss the remainder of the 2022 season due to a right lower leg non-displaced tibia fibula fracture. Dele Alli also had a kick from behind in this game. He elbowed Jackson in the chest, pushed Jackson straight to the ground in this game. I mean, he completely lost his cool. And yeah, you can go ahead and give Everton Blunder of the Week because they lost 4-0 to Minnesota United in friendly. But Dele Alli just, I know it's a friendly and nothing can be done to him, but it's totally uncalled for the way that he acted. And, playing these friendlies could also get Blunder of the Week because they risk injury. And yeah, it's cool watching your team play against big teams, but is it really that cool when you're in the middle of the season and one of your players get hurt? And in Minnesota United's case, now he's out for the rest of the season. And yeah, it's a huge money grab, huge exposure, both negatively, like we saw with Inter Miami and DC United for getting blown out by Barcelona and Bayern Munich. And then it is also positive when you look at Charlotte beating Chelsea and Minnesota United destroying Everton. Everybody's dunking on both of those teams for losing to MLS teams. And so it's a lot of publicity for MLS, but then you have the negative aspect when two of your worst teams in MLS get blown out, which is no surprise to any of us that pay attention to MLS, but to the rest of the world, they just think, oh, this is how all MLS is played. But yeah, I mean, just terrible from Dele Alli, a player that I remember when he was bought from MK Dons to Tottenham. This guy was potentially a future superstar for England in Tottenham, and injuries started to derail his career. Attitude issues, finds his way at Everton. And yeah, those attitude issues were definitely on display in this friendly against Minnesota United when Minnesota United were getting the best of Dele Alli. And then you have Dele Alli missing a point-blank shot. I mean, it's no wonder why he lost his cool because he was playing like typical Dele Alli. But regardless, it's a friendly dude. And you're going out here trying to purposely hurt players. Yeah, that's totally unprofessional in my opinion. But if you guys enjoyed this episode, you guys know by now to find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys get your podcasts, The Free Kick. Check out the social medias. I know I'm doing this backwards. On Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Free Kick Pod. Check out the website, thefreekick.net. And I believe Monday I am appearing on a Houston Dynamo podcast. I got hit up on Twitter about appearing on this podcast. I have no idea what this podcast is called. Don't know how you guys can find this podcast, but as soon as I have more information, I'll put it on Twitter for you guys if you guys want to listen to that podcast. And I'll also put that episode in the show description. But yeah, look forward to me talking about the Union on a Houston Dynamo show. I'm going to talk about the Union, I think, primarily, and then I guess we'll hear what they have to say about Houston. And then for my show, I'm trying to get a commentator on from Houston, as always. If not, I think I have a plan B lined up, which Houston's PR department recommended me. So shout out to Houston's PR department, 1, for getting back to me so quickly, and 2, giving me a plan B if one of the commentators can't come onto the podcast. See, it's really not that hard to reply back in Nashville. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.